Hey, what's going on out there, everybody? This is Sammy Leggett here representing TeamJVS, here to give you guys another movie review. The name of this movie is called The Banshees of Inisherin. This is from Martin McDonagh. If you've seen Three Billboards, you know who I'm talking about. And he wrote, directed this, and this is also starring Colin Farrell, Brian Gleason, Barry Keoghan, and it's, first off, Martin understands how to have a great ensemble, but even better than that, he understands dialogue. Like, this is the crazy thing about this film. I knew nothing about it, but I'm gonna give you a baseline premise of it because I think it'll help going into it. You have two lifelong friends that one day, one of those friends just decides, I don't want to be your friend anymore. We're done. And that decision leaves consequences for both men and pretty much for everybody around them. Now, Colin Farrell's character, Pádraic, he's got a sister named Sabine, played by Carrie Colm, and he lives with his sister. He kind of has farm hands, farm animals, and he really, that's all he does. He goes and does that. He goes to the pub. He meets his friends. He meets, just the people that are around the town. There's not a lot to do around at all. To the point that Sabine as a person is kind of like, she lives with her brother, but what else? What else is she about? Now, Brandon Colm, Colm as a character is Pádraic's friend, and all of a sudden Colm says, I'm done. And from that point, you try to comprehend in yourself, like, why? What's the decision? Like, why? And I think about maybe 30 minutes into the movie, you really understand why. And it's not, how do I put this? And this is what makes this movie so good. It's not that anybody did anything wrong. It's more about a question of, should this continue? Is this beneficial? And I'm not just talking about, a relationship or friendship. No, a person makes an individual choice to assess themselves and the environment around them and makes that decision with no regard to what that could mean. And I think that that's what makes it so fascinating, because you have one person who makes a decision for themselves very selfishly, but then the consequence of that action is the definition of who Colin Farrell's character, Pádraic, becomes. They are a byproduct of this decision in the most negative way possible. And I'll use this as an example. If you've seen There Will Be Blood, Daniel Day-Lewis and Paul Dano, take it as Daniel and Paul to those levels. Literally, that's where it gets. And it's crazy because they take it there. It's not like, oh, okay, this person did this, or this person was cutthroat here. There's a true line in the sand that's made, and every single time that line of sand is crossed, there's consequences to those actions. And I think that's what makes it so good. Both actors are killing it, because Pádraic as a character, he just seems like a normal, okay person. And it's kind of like what happens when a person's pushed to the brink and has to recount and resurface things about themselves that they didn't even see. And on the other side of that, with, Brendan's character, Colm, you start to question why a person would make the decision, And I think that is a fascinating, perspective to look at with this one. This is so well written, because on paper it shouldn't matter. I think this is the thing. You got great actors, yes. And you set them up, give them an alley-oop, but it's also got to be written well. And I think by the end of the film, you're just like, oh my gosh. And this is the weirder thing. Barry Keoghan in this one plays the role of Dominic. Dominic, he's a policeman's policeman's son, but he really is kind of weird, a little out there. But he's got a good soul. Like, he drinks a lot and he does stuff. He's kind of obnoxious at times, but he generally is a good soul, right? And because of their feud, that puts friction to him because he starts to see how it's starting to turn people. And you never know how something is going to change the atmosphere around them in a blink of a second. And I think that Dominic is that. And it's fascinating because it's not just a show of who these three men are, or even, you know, who Sabine is as sister and in the middle of the craziness. And she, at certain times, like, she's the savior of the story. But it also tells of the era that they're in. You know, I personally grew up in a small town. And it's kind of like when I moved away from the small town, like, you start to see certain things that you never see before. You start looking at like, oh, wow, I never thought this would be something that I would be doing, you know? And it's kind of like, if you never get that opportunity, what does that leave your headspace? Where does that leave your heart, you know? And the other thing that's so weird about Pádraic, once he starts to peel back his own layers, and you start to really see kind of like how he interacts with life, it's a very fascinating thing. And I think Colin does such a great job with it. Like, the chemistry between Colin and Brendan is, so freaking strong. So yeah, all across, this is a great film, but it's not for everybody. Like, it is gory, it can be graphic, it can be downright cutthroat. There's definitely nudity, there's language, there's a lot of excessive drinking. There's signs of like stress, trauma, depression possibly. So make sure you know that this is not for kids in any way, shape, or form. And even if you're watching it, know that, you know, this can be heavy very quickly. But I think that the actors lend themselves to the craft of Martin. Like, Martin is directing it well. Like, some of the shots are just gorgeous. Like, the open level shots where it's kind of like you see somebody walking from a distance, or you see somebody coming over a fringe. It's like leaving you with this impression of like dread, or sometimes like you're excited, sometimes you're hopeful, sometimes you're witnessing the beauty of the area. But because it's such an open area, you're kind of like in your head, like, there's nothing here. How maddening that could be. I think that lends itself to this story as well. This is easily a 9 out of 10. This is one of the better films I've seen this film. And it can come across as a dark comedy, but to me, I still think the perfect dark comedy is The Triangle of Sadness, Woody Harrelson. I think that's still one of the best dark comedies. This is just a great film. Like, there are some comedic moments, but not at its core. That's not. I don't think this is a dark comedy at its core. I think this is something completely different. It has comedy sprinkled in at times, but no, there's some very serious themes going on in this as well. Let me know what you guys think of the Banshees of Inisherin. I'll talk to you guys later. Make sure you like, subscribe, hit the bell button. Peace, people.